Hey everybody, it's Bob Crossan, Senior Managing Editor for Water and Waste Digest. I am back again here with Jason Iskovic. He is Director of Legislative Affairs for NACWA, and we're going to talk about all things in Washington and what he's seeing from his perspective, particularly on the clean water side of things.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much. We really appreciate having you on. I wanted to focus first and foremost on the Drinking Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Act. Now, this made its way through the Senate, and it has some pretty big funding elements to it, specifically regarding state revolving funds and whatnot. What are the next steps here? What kind of impact would this have on utilities and engineers and whatnot?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Yeah, so we're really excited. The bill passed the Senate EPW committee unanimously, and then 89 to 2 in the Senate a couple of weeks later. We're really excited. The House has a companion bill, at least on the clean water side here in the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. They passed theirs last week. Expected to come to the House floor hopefully sometime before July 4th recess or shortly after. Obviously, the House bill is a little higher numbers, but it also just focuses on the Clean Water Act side. Regardless, Senate House bill, there's tens of billions of dollars for new clean water infrastructure projects and some policies that they set forth. It's definitely sets the groundwork for infrastructure, especially in the water context. Shows, whether it's from the president's plan, and we'll get into that in a little bit, down to the Senate, the House, some of the bipartisan proposals that are out there. Water continues to be a huge component of that, and roughly on par with some of the other things on the infrastructure side that are being put forth. So we're very excited. We're hoping that even aside from the infrastructure conversations, while these bills obviously lay the groundwork, they do authorize these programs like the SRF, for example. Hoping to see that move, into a conference committee sometime soon, and hopefully get something to the president's desk. How that plays in with infrastructure, I think it's anyone's game, but it is another piece of the puzzle essentially on water infrastructure. NACWA strongly supports both the House and Senate bills, and hopefully they can come to some compromise here shortly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and of course, we've talked before about how important these state revolving funds are, and like how they kind of
Absolutely.
are the driving mechanism currently for a lot of projects and whatnot.
Yeah.
And this authorization is also for a decent chunk of time, for a couple years as well. So if it were to if the House bill, companion bill, were to also merge with that or like work in tandem with that, we'd be seeing a really decent chunk of change for each of those programs over the next couple of years, which would be really cool.
Yeah, if I think both those are 5 years. Like I said, the funding levels are a little bit different, but regardless, you would definitely see some pretty substantial increased authorized funding to the SRFs, some CSS stormwater grants, a few other climate resiliency, workforce development, just to name a few, especially as it relates to the clean water side. We're hoping to see those. Yeah, it'd be a 5 year authorization with some pretty substantially increased levels. Obviously, the appropriators would still have to appropriate those levels for each fiscal year. That's something we'll work on with them, but definitely a good start and something we're very excited about.
Yeah. So in addition to that, like putting that one aside, what are some other legislative pieces that look promising currently? My understanding is there are a ton of things out there right now. I know that they like the House not even a month ago was like looking at 10 separate bills or something like that. So what seems to look the most promising currently? Because it feels like there's a lot of stuff out there, and it's not likely that all of them are gonna obviously not likely all of them are gonna come through.
Yeah, I think right now you're right. There's a lot of bills out there. I think the infrastructure bills, obviously, namely the prime one, like we said, how that ties into some of the bills we just mentioned, versus some kind of the separate tracks that it may or may not take. Something we're keeping an eye on, obviously, first and foremost, and for clean water and how that plays out. I think aside from that, some of the other topical issues or pieces of legislation out there. One in particular is a bill that basically provides a low-income customer assistance program for water, both drinking water and clean water. That's a bipartisan bill. It actually begun to advance through the Energy and Commerce Environment Subcommittee last week, passed by a voice vote. We anticipate that'll get marked up in advance of the full committee sometime in the next couple of weeks, hopefully sooner than later. But we're very excited about that. That builds on to some degree, mirrors to some degree the language that was passed in the Senate Drinking Water Wastewater Infrastructure Act. That would also create a similar but different low-income customer assistance program for ratepayers. And very excited about that. It's something that's long overdue, and finally puts water on par with food, energy, other areas where there are assistance programs to help those households and families in most need. And we're very excited in something that NACWA and a lot of our other water sector partners are going to continue to push, and looking forward to see some type of advancement, hopefully this Congress.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting too because we're seeing those types of things, and then we also have Veronica Fox is now leading the EPA. Well, obviously, affordability's been a big thing for her, so to see that getting attention before she's even like officially in office is really
Right.
cool too. So that's exciting. But I wanted to swing back. You talked about infrastructure bill in general, right? American Jobs Plan back in March. This was announced. This plan was announced by Biden, and where do things stand now? Like what kind of my understanding is this kind of set the stage of like here's the frameworks I want you all to work in and create the funding that we need for all this stuff. Where do things
Yep.
stand currently, and where do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, I was speaking to a group the other day, Bob, and I actually joked, kind of not joke, but I said, if I don't confuse you more by the end of this, it means I didn't do a good job explaining this to you. So, not to confuse, your folks even more, but it's really kind of all over the place. And maybe that's a good thing to some degree. Maybe it's not, depending your view on it. But, I think that the kind of the overall thing, I think I even said this earlier, whether it's the president's plan, the Senate, the House, the bipartisan bill that is being floated on, discussed literally as we speak. Sounds like there'll be some further details, hopefully in the next couple of days on that. Water, there are tens of billions of dollars for clean water in all of those plans. Obviously, we're going to push for the highest levels possible. Kind of some of the mechanics and how that all comes together on, what, is it use existing versus new funding? What are the mechanisms for actually getting that funding out to utilities? Grants versus authorizations, as a stimulus type approach, the length of the bill. So not to go on and on, but I think it's kind of very up in the air as to how that comes together. I do think that we're at a critical juncture right now. I think the bipartisan bill probably has about a week or so maybe left before they can come to some kind of agreement, at least on the parameters, and then kind of get down to the details. I do know that the Senate Democrats are working on a path for reconciliation also as we speak to kind of trigger that budgetary mechanism for infrastructure so these bipartisan talks fall apart. Regardless, NACWA just wants to continue to push for the most robust funding for clean water possible, and really kind of bring the levels up to the need that's out there currently for clean water, and helping utilities and communities meet their infrastructure and Clean Water Act obligations.
Yeah. Well, I should mention too, we were talking about this before the call that we are currently filming this on June 21st. So if things have changed dramatically by the time that this airs, you'll know about it.
We'll
So
have to do a part two or three or four.
yeah, right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind with what Jason is saying here about the terms of the time frames and whatnot of later this week would be June 23rd and next week would be June 30th. So just keep those in mind when he's talking about these things. Um, but
And
yeah,
Bob, just really quick to that point, though, I think because of all the moving pieces and everything that's going on, I think, like I said, clean water has been a focus of all these plans. But for our members, it's rehashing, and they're great. Just continue to tell your members of Congress, senators, and representatives, the importance of clean water, the types of projects this can be impacted, have an impact on for their constituents, our utilities ratepayers, and I think just continuing to harp on that, trying to get as much funding as possible for through an infrastructure bill for those purposes, especially in the form of grant dollars, really kind of some fusion of cash for utilities to meet their obligations, and really build the infrastructure that's aging and long overdue, quite frankly.
yeah, yeah, totally. I think that we've talked about that before of like get involved with your local politicians. You can make a very big difference in getting involved in that way and bringing water to the forefront of their mind at the right time. And now is
Absolutely.
kind of the right time.
Absolutely. And we've seen that across the board. And, some of the COVID relief we got, whether it's through the low income HHS piece or some of the water and sewer dollars that were part of the infrastructure part of the COVID relief bill. So I think our members are definitely making an impact, and them continue to do so is going to make a further impact moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. So before I let you go, are there any other things that we should try and keep top of mind as we head into the second half of 2021? It looks like things are starting to open up, for example, so there's likely to be some live events and stuff like that. What anticipation are you seeing now that like the pandemic is starting to get further and further in the rearview mirror, it seems like.
Yeah, I think there's just going to continue to be an emphasis on, getting things done. I'm hoping that, people can start coming back in person. And as much as we love Zoom meetings, I think there's that personal touch that we get when we see folks in person, whether it's on the Hill or through meetings, meet with our members at conferences. So, I'm looking forward to that. How much that changes the legislative dynamic, I think a lot of it's TBD. There's a lot of work they have on the docket, whether it's infrastructure. The appropriations process kind of kicks off with some of the subcommittee markups in the House next week. I doubt they'll get to an agreement by September 30th when the fiscal year ends, and then begins on the 1st of October. But I think regardless, there's a lot of work to be done, and I think as things open up, hopefully people come together more and kind of start formulating further ideas and find a path forward.
Yeah. Well, and before too long, you're talking September, October, and once we get to November, December, it's like, all right, well, next election cycle's coming up. So,
Yeah, yeah, it's going to change things. We're moving into election season, so I think it's
mhm.
always tough regardless. But I think a lot of this needs to really be done by before the holiday season. Quite frankly, um, it only complicates and compounds the problems once you begin the actual election year. So hopefully they can get some stuff done by the end of the year. But I'm optimistic that I think there's some good things on the horizon for infrastructure generally, but the clean water sector specifically. I really do. I think one form or another, there's going to be good things on the horizon.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to going to some of these live events, and hopefully I can see you at some of them down the line here in this year, and maybe we can chat a little bit more then. But Jason, thank you so much for your time. For everyone who's watching, we'll have some links in the description below that you guys can check out, learn a little bit more about some of the things that Jason was talking about, and once again to Jason, thank you so much for being on. It's always a pleasure to talk to you about these things and catch up with you throughout the year on where things stand.
Thanks, Bob. Always appreciate you having me on, and look forward to continue talking more. And stay tuned. A lot more to come. So I know we'll be talking quite a bit.
I'm looking forward to it.